This debt ceiling news, it sounds like Tim Geithner is either grossly incompetent or bending the numbers as a negotiating tactic. How else could he have been so far off on the mark? That's my opinion, obviously not John's. Joining us now to discuss, Democratic strategist Jimmy Williams, and Hadley Heath is senior policy analyst with the Independent Women's Forum. Hadley, let me start with you. What do you think of this whole situation? Is this politics by Timothy Geithner, Secretary Geithner?
It's politics on every side. What's so frustrating is this letter clearly underscores what many Americans already know. We have a budget crisis because we have a spending crisis. And while the talking heads on TV go on about tax cuts for the rich, will we get them, will we not get them, this is really about spending. We have to address spending now. Yeah, and when you read his notes, the outline that he sends to Harry Reid, he says the government is spending $100 billion more per month than what it brings in. I mean, it's really incredible. Jimmy Williams, your assessment of this situation, what does this mean for the fiscal cliff discussions?
Well, I don't think it really means a whole lot. I mean, I think it's sort of the White House's way or Treasury's way of trying to put some external pressure on the people in the building behind us. Oh, by the way, none of them are there. But I'm not sure that that's really going to work, frankly. And John, our colleague John Horwood is exactly right. This was not a surprise. We knew this was coming. The question that it's, 3 business days, as you say, before the actual deadline itself, that is a little bit disconcerting. But again, it's not surprising, and I don't think it will affect the negotiations at all, frankly, not at all.
What about the Secretary's use of this phrase? The country would otherwise default on its legal obligations. I think he purposely uses this phrase default to confuse the public. During the last debt ceiling debate, we had the same confusion, as if the U.S. government would not pay interest on its debts. Hadley, you know perfectly well there's about 1 million things. I've been in a country where they ran out of borrowing capacity, and they've managed for several years to survive without that borrowing capacity, right? There's 1 million things you can do before you don't pay your debt on the U.S. Treasuries, before you stop paying Social Security, before you do lots of other things. Is he purposely trying to elevate this to a situation that frightens people?
Well, I don't.
Michelle, in many ways, this is like the Mayan calendar. The Mayans said that the world would end on December 21st. We're all still here. The fiscal cliff negotiations and this debt limit thing are not the end of the world. We will figure it out. But the most important thing to keep in mind is long term. If we want to have a healthy fiscal situation, we have to have a healthy economy. So we have to address growth. That's something else that is totally missing from this conversation.
Jimmy?
Understand that the executive branch is required under federal law to notify the legislative branch that, in fact, they are going to come up against the deadline. That is precisely why he said that.
But what about the phrase default, Jimmy? That's what I'm asking about. He uses that phrase default. You remember the last discussion, right? Oh, we're not going to, the U.S. government isn't going to pay its debts. We're going to be like Greece. That was everybody, both sides, by the way, Republicans and Democrats, both use this phrase default. You know perfectly well how it works in the government.
Well,
you can make choices.
Michelle, I hate to break the news to you, but I don't think anyone other than people watching CNBC, I don't think anyone actually cares. And no one actually believes that the federal government's actually going to not actually pay Social Security or any of its other debts.
Are you kidding me? I think they do. That's what they start with, right? They start with, oh, you know what, the Social Security checks aren't going to go out. And then what do people do? They call their congressman. They get very upset. They get very frightened. The elderly get very frightened that they think they're not going to have their weekly paychecks. I mean,
well, this would not be the first time that anyone from the executive branch has tried to scare senior citizens. I can promise you that, whether it be Democrats or Republicans.
No, that would be all right. So what do we do? We're going over the cliff. Jimmy, you think we're going over the cliff? Hadley, you think we're going over the cliff?
I talked to the Speaker's people today, and the bottom line is the Speaker did something remarkably smart. He didn't bring his bill up because he didn't have the votes, and then he sent every one of his members home. He sent them home so they could not come on TV and beat the hell out of him. Bottom line is the Senate was always going to come up with a deal. The question becomes is what is it, and does McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, Senate Republican leader, actually let Senator Reid get a bill off the floor of the United States Senate by the end of the week, or Saturday or Sunday? If that's the case, that's fine. Guess what? It doesn't matter what the Senate comes up with. The House is still not going to pass it, and John Boehner just can't pass a bill off his floor with a majority of Democrats and 20 Republicans. He can't do it.
The House has already voted to extend all of the Bush tax cuts. So I think the House leaders are right to say, listen, the ball is in the Senate's court. Until they act, we can't know what kind of deal we can come up with.
I hate to break the news to you, but the ball is always in the Senate's court because that's the way the Senate works.
You're both arguing about process Here's what I don't understand. On both sides, I say to Democrats who come on, I say, listen, what if the Republicans voted to extend taxes on everybody that you want? Would you means test Social Security or Medicare? And the vast majority say, oh, no, we wouldn't do that.
Not this Democrat. I would absolutely support that.
Okay, but you're not, unfortunately, you're not in Congress. Hadley,
you're right.
Then I talked to Republicans. I said, listen, if tomorrow the Democrats had an epiphany and they decided that Representative Ryan's plan for making Medicare a voucher system were the best thing to do, would you vote to raise taxes on millionaires? And Hadley, they say no. I mean, you can't get anywhere with these two. Neither side.
We're going over the
cliff. We've got 5 days left, and people are asking, will there be a deal or no deal? A more important question, and Jimmy referred to this, is what kind of deal? There are worse things than making no deal. A bad deal would be much worse.
No. All right, ladies and gentlemen, great to have you. Really enjoyed it, Jimmy Williams.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
I love the bow tie.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Now to the